Another VC Wisdom Pod with Shawn Flynn. He is an investment banker, of course, and he's also the host of the Silicon Valley podcast. Me and Shawn talk about M&A. Last time we spoke, we talked about secondaries. So Shawn schooled me on the topic, and I must say it's incredibly interesting. So today we are going to talk about these things. We're going to talk about Silicon Valley, of course, which I consider myself to be remotely part of. And we're going to talk about podcasting as well. Shawn, welcome to the pods. Tell us a bit more about yourself and your businesses.
Charles, thanks for having me on. This is an honor. I've been involved in Silicon Valley since moving back here from China in 2013. I've been involved with a lot of startups, an angel group here. For a number of years, I was helping companies set up operations between Silicon Valley and tech parks in mainland China and other parts of the world. And through that, I got involved with investment banking, where right now I focus on mergers, acquisition, growth capital, and secondaries. And for your audience, what does that mean? Well, I know, Charles, you just had a puppy, so I'll include that in my example. Say you go through life, you meet that special someone, you come together, you get married. Well, that's a merger, two parties becoming one. Then maybe you're walking in the park and you go, oh my gosh, that puppy is so gorgeous, so beautiful. I want to take it into my family. You bring it into your family through an acquisition. And now that puppy, it needs to go to the vet. It needs food to go from this little puppy to this big dog. Well, to do that, you need money, you need growth capital. And so all day long, I'm working with companies to provide those types of transactions: mergers, acquisition, growth capital, both debt and equity. And then there's instances where you have these companies, these large companies that stay private for so long, but employees and early investors, they want some liquidity. They look rich on paper, but maybe they don't have much cash in the bank. Well, we can help sell those shares on the secondary market. So that's also what we do. It's a small part. And then when I'm not doing any of that, I'm the host of the Silicon Valley podcast, which I absolutely love. And I mean, Charles, you have a podcast that's phenomenal. So as you know, it's a great opportunity to sit down with some amazing people, get insight from them, learn from them, and it's just an amazing opportunity. I highly recommend everyone out there, if you don't have a podcast right now or some way of getting in front of people to sit down and talk, seriously consider doing it. It's a great life-changing event. So that's a
I
little bit about
second
me.
on that. Yeah, like really cool way of funneling people as well, then connecting and building communities. And yeah, and producing serendipity. I like to call it maximizing serendipity. Shawn, let's start with China, because both of us have been to China. You in Beijing, me in Hong Kong. I'd love to learn more about your interest there and what insights you gained from all your time there.
Oh gosh. I'm not sure how long your podcast is, but well, one, China is a different world. I mean, not a different country. I feel literally a different world. The culture is so different. The ways of doing business, interacting with people, just everything. It was so interesting. I was there almost 5 years total. And then afterwards, for about 4 years, I was helping companies set up operations. And then plus my wife's from China. So I have pretty good experience with the culture, living there and everything. And I'll be honest, no matter how long I've had some type of affiliation with China, I'm always learning. Always learning. The way of doing business is so different. The way of just interaction and friends and what is polite to say and what's not, and how you can word things. And it's always amazing. And it's kind of a love-hate relationship with me, where I'm always learning. It's great, but at the same time, there's so many challenges. I've had so many instances where people have tried to take advantage of me, but at the same time have been the best friends. So it's interesting.
Nice. I would also describe it this way. I've spent very few time in Hong Kong. You spend like 4 or 5 or even 6 years of your life there. It's been like 4 months. More love than hate, I would say, because I haven't done much business there. But yeah, if you're gonna feel like you're walking on landmines every time you try to speak your mind, I think that's quite challenging to do business, especially as an ultra libertarian. We know that Silicon Valley is also very much this, you say what's on your mind with no filters. Obviously, you're mindful of the other person in front of you. You don't try to offend them, but me, I just don't like, for example, when it comes to, the woke movement and talking about race and religions and stuff. And when you're walking on eggshells, it's just so uncomfortable. It generates cortisol in the brain, and this is not the kind of environment I wanna live in. But my experience in China was beautiful. I was running in the trail mountains of Hong Kong, and oddly enough, people think it's this big city, but I was on New Island. I did travel to China as well, and it was so chaotic. The roads, like 5 cars trying to get in the lane, and one bike and motorcycle. So that was fascinating. Really love my time there, but yeah, I need to come back. What I need to talk with you about, though, is a point that still catches my attention nowadays, which is China vs US kind of mentality. I read, is it like Keith Dubois, the VC guy, his husband book that he made on the US China war kind of, and I believe that US has a huge innovation advantage. Like, yeah, we're really creative and so forth. China has a quantity and speed advantage, in my opinion. That could make things interesting. I don't think there's gonna be an overtake in power as percent, and we'd have to define what an overtake means. But what is your opinion on folks that keep mentioning that China is overtaking US?
Mm. I mean, that's definitely a topic worth debating. I kind of look at it as this way. The next world power is always the location where people want to move to, where people want to live. It's where the brightest minds go and where they, from a very early age, dream of attending. So around the world, people think, from a very early age, I'd love to go to UC Berkeley. I would love to go to Stanford. I would love to live in the Bay Area. So the Bay Area is this amazing location. I do know that, China has so many engineers. They can push so much into technology, resources, and laws and regulations. But do the brightest minds in the world want to move there? So, even though you have everyone saying, excuse me, that it's on the rise, and it is. They have a lot of great things going for them. Still, when it comes to innovation and next steps forward, are the brightest minds moving there? Or, because if they aren't, they're always going to be 1 or 2 steps behind. If the brightest minds are in Norway, if the brightest minds are in Singapore, wherever they are, that's where we're going to see innovation. And then there'll be other locations that will copy, mimic, maybe improve on it, but they won't come up with those ideas. So I don't know. Hopefully hopefully there's a way in the future where everyone can get along, trade ideas. But who knows what's happening with the news? Who knows what's happening? But right now, I really do believe that it's where the brightest minds want to move, live, grow, raise families. That's where we see the innovations.
Right. Fully agree with that. Very good mental model there. Because me personally, I went to China to get out of my comfort zone, to have this culture shock. Maybe it was the same way with you, or just to experiment something different. I know that a lot of friends did the same. I think, yeah, nowadays it's still Europe. People want to move in if they're in Asia, let's say, or, well, Asia, there's a lot of US as well, but let's say that, yeah, people go to Europe for a better future from Africa and from East Asia, and even from ex-USSR, I think. And then obviously US, Canada, for anyone in the Americas, I think are the destination. If we want to pinpoint the capital of American dream, or just the dream of a better future, then I think it's fair to say that it's Silicon Valley still, and precisely SF. We're seeing a lot of talent merge there when it comes to the AI hysteria / race that we're seeing right now. And yeah, it's still number one, right? And you and I know about winner takes all. Winner takes all is interesting because, yeah, it's always number one, and humans like to think in simple terms. Okay, let's just move there. It's the best place in the world, and the rest will happen by itself. And they're somewhat right. We humans adapt quite rapidly, and think it's one of the best choice for most to move in SF. And the funny thing, or the not so funny thing with that, is that there's top resources leaving the country and adding to this other country, and it's their loss at the same time. So yeah, just with that model, I don't think that the overtake is going to happen anytime soon. Plus the model that you've said now, there's the nomad movement around the world with people traveling around, and a lot of Americans and Canadians moving to South America, like I do, or Central America and Mexico, for example. I do think that's a huge force as well, but it is quite small compared to the others. And then I talked with another guy today about building your own community, right? Your own island. And we can see the dystopia in that, but we can also see the future, a la Peter Thiel, if you want. The question I have for you, like we've seen this exodus in SF in the Silicon Valley. Now we're seeing it coming back on track again. How have you been feeling this with a foot on the ground? Like, what are you seeing? And do you think AI is this next big revolution that's going to happen with its core, its center in SF?
Ooh, a lot of questions there. For the exodus of Silicon Valley, I've definitely seen that. I've had quite a number of friends that have moved to Florida, Texas, Vegas, that at first they said, "Yeah, I'm just gonna be here a few months." They're not coming back. I mean, they're loving it there.
Miami.
I've Miami, oh God, yeah. And I got other buddies that, had raised capital here, and then they moved down to Medellin, Colombia to grow their
Cost of
companies.
life and so forth.
Exactly, engineer talent, everything. So you raise, 1 million, 2 million in Silicon Valley, you have your team overseas, grow the product, really develop it. It goes so much further than if the team was actually here physically paying these exorbitant rents. The cost of living in Silicon Valley is ridiculous, but you have so much talent and resources in a small area that, one way companies are doing it is they have their CEO or their VP of sales or someone here that needs to be here to network. And then they have their engineer team in other places of the world. And there's so much good talent everywhere in the world these days. So, I mean, I do see these hubs, these pockets of innovation growing. I think the pandemic really sped things along with that. But also, we're seeing people now, you know, that are coming to Silicon Valley from Europe, from these other countries that are looking to start their companies here, looking to gain knowledge and experience. The universities are back in person, which is a great pool of talent. I mean, you see Berkeley, Stanford, the engineers, the companies that come out of these universities, and there's so many other universities here that people don't even know about or think about. University of Santa Clara, San Francisco State, San Diego State, St. Mary's, the list goes on of all these universities here just continually driving young, talented engineers, young, talented people that want to start businesses to this area. So, I mean, I do see it coming back to life with all the conferences, everything. As mentioned, generative AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, it's been here for years now, but it's just been in the background. It wasn't the buzz. I mean, it was the buzz maybe 2016, 2017, and then crypto took over, and then, blockchain, and then telehealth, and now it's going to generative. There's always these cycles where something's in favor and then something drops out. But right now, we're really seeing it in generative AI. And I do think it's very disruptive. I've had conversations with people that own IT companies that say, gosh, one employee is doing the work of four now because of all these AI tools they're using. I've had conversations with people that own marketing companies. Oh my gosh, my team, I've never seen how productive they're just coming up with idea after idea. It's either in the future you're going to learn to work symbiotically with AI, or you're going to be left in the dark. And what's one area I kind of see, at least in the short term, is a lot of these jobs that were outsourced over to the Philippines and that for marketing, just because labor was cheaper, is now being brought back in-house because people are just subscribing to these AI tools and are able to do it themselves real quick. So, I mean, we'll see what the combination of remote work or hybrid work, living abroad, AI tools to come in, just where people end up living, the productivity that people have, just where, I mean, how great would it be right now? You go to Silicon Valley, you raise capital, and then you live over in Medellin for the year, develop the product, build it out, get sales. You're using all these AI tools. So instead of 15 employees, you have 5 or whatever doing sales, marketing, building the product, everything. I mean, money just is so much more efficient at that point. It's crazy. They always say the cost of doing business is going down. You'll hear these old VCs talk about, yeah, to start a startup back in my day, you need at least, 5 or $10 million to for buy servers to do everything else. And now it's, oh, you just have your Amazon crowd credits account and you outsource this and you have this, and it's so simple and cheap to build a business these days, and it's only going to get cheaper and quicker with artificial intelligence, these tools coming out. So i just I just see so much opportunity for people with ideas to execute and be efficient with their time, and it's amazing. I'm not sure about you, but I'm using chat gpt
Same
every
here.
day. It's crazy for my emails, for my responses, for you name it. There's an AI tool out there. I'm playing around with testing, or someone's sending me a link for that, and it's incredible. It's a great time. It's a great opportunity right now.
Yeah, for entrepreneurs, but what about VCs? If you factor in all of these trends, the check size that you will cut will be smaller. Does that mean a smaller share in the business? Tell us about the VC side.
Hmm. So the valuations have changed quite a bit in the last year, 8 months or so. Whereas before, at the beginning of the pandemic, these companies were getting insane valuations, just insane. The the difficulty with that is, you're thinking, great, I don't give up much of my company for this equity, or for this cash I'm getting. But the problem right now is, I mean, investors, most of them want to see some type of, 10x growth between investment rounds. So if they raised at a huge round a year ago or 18 months ago, and they're going out now and they didn't hit those milestones, and valuations have come down because of risk in the market, investors want to de-risk their investments. Now they're having to either do basically the same valuation as before, or a lower valuation, a down round, which really dilutes the company, which investors don't like, which owners don't like. No one likes that. It kills morale for the company. There's so many negatives to that, but that's the reality that's happening right now because of how inflated valuations were before. That, things have changed. When it comes to check size from investors, I mean, that changes quite frequently based on a lot of things. The environment, the you know, the sector, a lot of things. But companies are staying private longer too. These companies that, 20 years ago go public when they have a few million in revenue, now they're staying private when they have hundreds of millions in revenue. There's so much private money chasing these companies. So there's so much opportunity for these investors to keep investing in higher and higher rounds if they're able to raise the funds for it.
Right.
So
So
yeah.
yeah, for the mergers, the acquisitions, um, the secondaries, with all the trends that you name, how does that influence these markets? Are you seeing more of these? Will we get more mergers, more acquisitions? Um, is capital like more readily available, and are companies still rushing for an IPO in the age of AI, or will it be these forever cash cows type of businesses that will fuel themselves forever?
Ooh, good questions there. I mean, the mergers and acquisition market, when you hear it's down, for like publicly traded companies, and that currently not seeing as much activity as before. In that lower mid market area, it's slowed down a tiny bit if you look at some data sets, but it's still pretty vibrant. There's still a lot of people that have said, "Hey, I made it through the pandemic. I'm getting on in years. It's time for me to sell." Or, "Hey, I've built this company over the last 5 years, 6 years. I have some other ideas I want to work on. It's time to sell." Or, "We're having difficulty raising our round. Time to sell." There's so many reasons why a company might want that exit. I mean, a lot of these exits are come about from a strategic or private equity group or someone, family office, reaching out to a company and go, listen, we love what you're doing. We'd like to acquire you. And that's how, these conversations start. So there's going to be those those liquidity events. Um, yes, it's slowed down a little bit compared to years past, but years past were just anomalies. Those were, not the norm. Um, so moving forward, I mean, I do see, at least the conversation I've been having, things picking up kind of like Q4, Q1 of next year is at least what some people are saying, but it's still pretty active out there. There's private equity guys sitting on so much cash. There's strategics that need innovation to stay relevant. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to do mergers, acquisitions. And with that, I mean, there's still a lot of transactions happening.
Last question for you, Shawn. You've done podcasting quite a lot. What insights do you have for us on how to run a podcast properly? And also briefly tell us from the insights that you had from interviewing folks and legends like Jim McKelvey, Square co-founder. Two questions in one here. So insights about podcasting and insights that you got from your guests.
So for insights into great podcasting, I mean, I really try to build that relationship with whoever my guest is in advance. So I'll have a screening call with them where we'll go over potential topics. I'll send a question set to them, ask them to respond and edit things. Set up the time. I try to have as many touch points with the person as possible, both before and after the podcast, because each one of my guests, I really try to build that relationship with them. So much better for the conversation, so much better in general. And it's how you build a community. I mean, one of my favorite stories of all time is I got to interview the Consulate General, Shlomi, of Israel. And after the interview was done, Oliver Miller, the co-founder of Intel Capital, who I had interviewed months before, reached out to me and said, "Hey, Shawn, can you make a warm intro? I have a company I'd like to present to him." And I thought, oh my gosh, the co-founder of Intel Capital is asking me for an intro to the Consulate General of Israel. This is insane. And it was all because of the podcast and building those relationships both before and after the podcast that facilitated these conversations. So to run a good podcast, I'd say do everything you can to build relationships. Do everything you can to really prepare for it, ask questions, visualize how the interview goes. I think that adds a ton. For takeaways from guests, excuse me, takeaway from guests, so many. I think one of the biggest things I've noticed is the most successful ones. And I've interviewed all levels. The most successful ones, a few things. One, anytime that something went well with the company, they gave all the credit to the employees, they gave all the credit to everyone else. Anytime something bad happened, they took all the blame, all the credit. Another thing is I noticed how quickly they were able to build rapport with me. And what I mean by that is throughout the interview, and you'll see it if you go back to my podcast and listen, the most successful people kept saying my name over and over again. "Shawn, that was a great question. Shawn, let me think about that." Yeah. Whereas the ones that weren't as successful, or, they would just answer the question. There was that little bit extra effort I felt of them trying to talk to me as an individual, as a person. And that really resonated. And I started noticing that after several episodes. So Charles, I got to say your name more throughout the episode. And another thing is they're always asking questions before the interview. "Hey, Shawn, when is this going to go? How I do a lot of my recordings in person. How do you change, that soundboard you're using? Why this? Why that?" Always asking questions. And I think last thing that they always could paint a great picture of what they were going to do next. And that was always interesting too, because no one ever retires. They're always working on something else. They can't stay idle. There's no such you sell a company, maybe you take 6 months off, but you have another idea and you're just going at it. And these people seem to always be on, always. So those were, some of the takeaways I got from 180 plus episodes now. So
Love it, man. Uh, good insights. Good insights. Love it. Shawn, tell us a bit more where people can find out more about you and all your company and your podcast.
great. So Charles, before that, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be on your show. And if you want to find out more about me, my podcast is the Silicon Valley Podcast. Just go to thesiliconvalleypodcast.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Shawn, SHAWN, Flynn, FLYNN. I'm most active on LinkedIn. And if you are that company out there looking to do a merger acquisition growth capital and middle market size, please let me know. Happy to answer any questions. And with that, once again, Charles, I really want to thank you for this opportunity.
Pleasure, man. Thank you so